The Terminal Experiment by Robert J. Sawyer. So this book came out in 1995 and it won the Nebula Award for Best Novel that same year. Now, I had previously read The Neanderthal Parallax and I didn't really like it overall. There was just a lot of weirdness going on with some of the characterization and the characters themselves, the dialogue, and I'll post my review of those books down in the description, but I was really hoping that this Nebula Award-winning novel would kind of go in a different trajectory, and I was hoping I would like this one a lot more. But in the end, I felt this book was really plagued with a lot of the same issues that I had with that last one. So, this is a book I probably don't really recommend to too many people. Maybe it's just me and Sawyer is just not quite the writer for me. I'm not going to give up on him yet because I do really like this style of book to mix in every once in a while. This is kind of one of those fast-paced, page-turning thrillers, and it's got some interesting tech and a few science fiction elements to it. And they're kind of fun. You don't have to spend a lot of time deep thinking a lot of this. Everything's kind of laid out there for you. I mean, you could say it's a bit shallow, but it's just really easy to read. And a lot of times these books can be very entertaining. So I still probably will try a few other of his books in the future. But let's just kind of get on into this one, and I'll talk briefly about what this is about. So, like I said, he wrote this in 95, but most of the book takes place in 2011. And in the prologue, it's one of these tactics that a lot of authors use. It gives you a little slice of the story about 3/4 of the way through the book or whatever. And then we go back in time, and then you have to kind of see how the events unfold to catch up to that prologue that he teases you with in the beginning. So in the prologue, we're in 2011, and our main character, Peter, is kind of rushing into this hospital, trying to talk to this detective who is in really bad shape, probably going to die. And he basically makes it to her and says, "Hey, it wasn't me, it was a copy of me." And that's kind of the setup and the hook he tries to get you invested in this story with. So then we go back to 1995. It's the only chapter kind of that's outside of 2011. And it's basically just kind of to set up Peter and his career trajectory. So he went to medical school, wasn't quite sure what he wanted to do, and he was able to help this doctor who was going to do a organ harvest on someone who was going to die, and they were kind of being held on life support. And as this doctor's removing some of the organs from this nearly dead patient, our main character, Peter, he starts to think that the patient isn't really dead. And so this ends up sticking with him, and he ends up kind of becoming an inventor in medical technology. So then we go back to 2011 again, and he's married, he's been in this career, he's invented some things, he's had a certain level of fame, and he's really trying to ultimately figure out when a person is truly dead. And his technology ends up, he kind of ends up discovering what he calls a soul wave. So he uses some of his sensors on some old people who are very close to death, and they know death is imminent, and they kind of monitor them. And he ends up seeing what everyone believes to be the soul leaving the body. It becomes a huge worldwide sensation. He becomes rich. He gets invited on talk shows. There's little excerpts all throughout the book that just give you little snippets of what's going on around the world, because this is such a paradigm-shifting thing, from religious people to abortion people. Everybody is weighing in on this new idea that there really is a soul, and we can see it and monitor it and watch it leave the body. He also puts these sensors on pregnant women at all different levels of of their pregnancy, and then he finds when the soul basically enters the fetus too. So now we have the beginning and the end of a person's life with their soul, and being able to know exactly when it enters and leaves. And like I said, he becomes famous, gets a lot of money, gets a lot of fame, all that kind of stuff. At the same time, he has a friend who's like a computer programmer, and he's been working on this technology where they can kind of imprint a person's mind into a computer almost in their entirety. And so Peter and his friend, they want to understand a little bit more about the soul and what part of the psyche it's in. And so they end up doing an experiment where they take Peter's brain, basically, bring it into a computer, and on the back here, they talk about kind of the 3 different versions they make of him inside of this computer simulation. And so it has all of Peter's thoughts at that point. And what this story ends up kind of becoming is a sort of a mystery, because one of these computer entities that came from Peter ends up committing some crimes to try to kind of get some revenge or redemption on some things that have happened in Peter's life in the past. So that's kind of the idea of the book. And like I said, he comes up with some good ideas. Some of this is really interesting, but let's just get into the pros and cons. Okay, so pros. This is a fast, easy to read, page-turning book. It's 330 pages, and I kind of just breezed through it. There's not a ton of deep thinking involved. There wasn't a lot of characters. You can breeze through these books, and a lot of times I like this style of book every once in a while because you can kind of just cut loose and read it for the entertainment, and they can be a lot of fun. Now, there's also the tech that he envisioned, and some of that was pretty cool. He envisioned smart homes that had lights that would turn on and off as you're entering rooms. I know this idea was probably around, but he made it a kind of a big thing in the future of 2011. There's thumbprint door locks to get in and out of your house. He almost has like a Google Maps type thing when you're driving around. It just doesn't give you like turn-by-turn navigation. So he did envision and predict a lot of tech that ended up happening. His version of the internet and some of that stuff, you know, that's a hard thing to say he nailed perfectly, but he did envision a lot of things that ended up happening, you know, ordering food online, or some of those things that maybe quite weren't completely hashed out in 95. So I'll give him credit for that. And that part of the book was pretty interesting. Okay, now let's get into the cons. Probably the biggest con for me is the way he writes his characters. And I'm all for unlikable characters as long as it serves some purpose for the plot or some thought experiment that the author is trying to get you to think through. And there's some of my favorite books out there have characters that you just don't like, but they are there to serve a purpose. Now, these characters, in the beginning, you're not really, I think, supposed to like them, but the way their character arcs progress through the story, I'm pretty sure Robert Sawyer wants you to like our main character and his wife at the end of this one, but I still didn't. I didn't feel that they were realistic. Some of the issues they had in between, you know, with them, like there was this infidelity thing going on between them, and that led to part of the conflict in this book. It just didn't seem real, or the resolution of it just, it didn't do anything for me to make me like these characters any better or anything like that. So if these characters are supposed to be keeping the plot going and keeping this moving along, that part didn't do it for me. But, you know, maybe some other parts of a novel will have other elements that move the plot along. This one, not so much either. We'll get into that. So the dialogue can be really bad. Some of the writing is just like pop culture references mixed with just, it seems like unrealistic dialogue. And I know he created this one character, this guy named Hans, I believe it is, just to be the most loathsome person out there. But everything around him, it was just horrible. It just was not fun reading any of these parts, you know. And now let's talk about an element that if the characters aren't moving along the plot, you know, maybe the mystery, maybe the other elements could. But with this one, it became this like mystery of which one of these three entities were committing these crimes that, you know, they had imprinted Peter into the computer. Well, you know, it didn't matter to me. I didn't care which one did it. And in the end, they kind of figure out which one did it. It didn't really make sense, but he came up with the ending. But they had a way to just wipe all three of them out. And it wasn't like these entities were considered conscious or sentient or anything like that. They got loose in the internet and they were running amok doing whatever they wanted to do. And it's like, just wipe them out. Like, that's a real easy solution to this. But that became what he wanted to drive the plot with, and I just wasn't interested in it. I just basically read the end all the way through to see how he ended it and to, you know, just finish the novel up. And luckily it was a, you know, fast, easy read. So, you know, this isn't one I would really recommend, but I'm not sure I'm going to give up on Sawyer yet. I still have a few of his other books, like Calculating God, and then there's Frame Shift and Flash Forward. So I might give one of those a go in the future, just when I'm in the mood for this style of book, and hopefully I like one of those a little bit better. Maybe some people can comment and let me know if there's one that maybe has a little bit better characterization or plot elements or something like that. But this one just didn't do it for me. But, you know, it is what it is. So that's it for that one. Next up, I'm reading I Remember Palahaxie by Michael G. Coney. And I'm already into that one, and I'm really liking it. You know, Rax was one of my favorite books I've read this year, and this is a sequel to that one. So just stay tuned for that review coming out next, and we'll see you in the next video.